So one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people are looking at when it comes to a Pokemon hobby is predominantly how can I make it full time? Can it be possible? We're seeing crazy amounts of stories coming out of people just running for obviously going for vending, going for selling products, selling cards on eBay, TCG, and the kind of big question is a lot of people are obviously going in and saying, I want to make it full time, and is it plausible? Can people actually do it? Because when it comes to it, there's a lot of kept secrets, obviously, depending on what you personally are looking for. Are you looking for a full-time job on minimum wage? Are you looking to make bank? Is that the kind of vibe that you're trying to go for? Are you trying to make as much money as possible, selling as much money, selling as many cards as possible? Because realistically, the almost hobby is inevitably endless. When it comes to actually doing cards, for instance, that is going to be almost your bread and butter of it makes whatever you can get, basically. It comes to product, that really comes down to how much product can you actually get. Because that's the big thing when anybody's running for a distributor. If you're looking to sell product, if you're going for Japanese, Korean, you see it all over TikTok, Korean, Japanese, any sort of older sword and shields, you see it absolutely everywhere. And most definitely, that is going to be the hardest point to get into. It's really difficult at the moment because everybody is trying to get into it. Either trying to get a distributor for their personal collection, trying to keep a sealed collection because they know they've got this excess amount of money, and if they can get one, they can get it at a fraction of the price, and they don't have to sell it until it's up in value. Again, whether that's plausible, if that's possible, it's a great way if you are looking at a sealed collection, but realistically, that is not trying to make this full-time. That is more of the investment side of stuff, trying to kind of keep it back and then sell it on in the later kind of future fortune, trying to get fortune from it as such. But in terms of making it a job, making it a side hustle, making it a full-time thing, that could be a mixture of everything. You could potentially try and pick up product. And to be honest, the product is hopefully more the easier side of stuff, depending on if you are getting it at MSRP, if you are trying to kind of get yourselves into the market side of stuff, and if you are mixing that depending on if you are in person, if you are buying a store, or if obviously you are just trying to do it online. It is more than possible everywhere. And it mainly comes into how much effort do you put in. There is multiple places around the local area that have got common LGSs that are obviously getting product, which again is very scarce for a lot of people. It's not necessarily the greatest time for product, especially in English, because obviously it is more expensive. It's very expensive on market price, and in terms of distribution for MSRP, it's very scarce. It's at the moment not printed to the absolute craziest amounts because everybody wants it. So it is at the moment just little waves here and there, and realistically if you go to try and get your stock from Smiths or something to then put it into market, yes, you might get a few sales that way, but realistically everybody's waiting for that MSRP at the moment anyway. So whether you get a kind of a full-time income sort of sales, especially if you are looking at trying to open up a store, there's obviously costs of that. Plus then if you are obviously looking at doing this as a side hustle to start with, you got to think of how much time can you truly kind of put in to be able to kind of run a store and a full-time job or even a part-time job, and you kind of flex it until basically it makes enough money. But then you've got the kind of online side of stuff, and again they comes with a bits of drawbacks. Obviously you've got cost of actually having a subscription, for instance, on something like eBay. If you I suppose Etsy could be another way, but realistically eBay, TCG Market or TCG Player or Card Market would be the places you'd sell individual cards, and I believe you can still send product as well. But then you've got to think of postage cost, you've got to think of packaging, actually being able to package it, you've got to think of storing it, because realistically you are trying to store, in terms of cards, a lot more than what you would do if you are trying to kind of say vend with stuff, because you obviously only have either a table or two tables, so you're trying to pack as much as you can. Realistically from that, it is the numbers game. And again, I've seen stores that have or just predominantly sell more cards, singles, if they go with bulk, and also high-end singles. And the main thing is the whole point of kind of building this into some kind of like a full-time gig is you've got to make profit. It's great saying I've ran a six-figure business if all of the money is going straight back in. At some point, you will need to be able to take out X amount to pay yourself, basically. So if I'm, for instance, putting in a deposit of 10 grand, for instance, I've got to make somewhere around the 2 to 3 grand each month to live. So that 10 grand has got to make a 3 grand profit. Now, realistically, if we think of markets, you've got to think, how am I getting product? If it's actual single products or actual single cards, I've got to think, I've got to buy off somebody at a market price, or at a lower price, to be able to put it at a market price. Because obviously when it comes to selling online, if you are selling singles, sometimes it can be ramped up a little bit, because especially if I'm thinking of a random card that only sells for £1, I can't sell it specifically at £1, because obviously it then goes through the postage. If, for instance, eBay, I know very well, takes, say, 87p for the second stamp on a Royal Mail, that's obviously going to then put you down into, what, 13p made. But then also you got to think, I've then got to pay 10-13% for eBay to take it, and then also my actual product. So if I'm going to put it in a mailer, if I'm going to put it in an envelope, that's going to cost per one maybe only like 5 to 10p. But realistically, if I'm selling that card at flat £1, I've only got to buy it at £1, so I'm already losing. Then you're losing already selling it. So realistically, I've got to look at selling it at £2. And if that's going to be a V card, I would then take the 87p for it, so basically £1.13. I take 5p for all my mailing costs, so obviously that's going to bring it down to like £1.06. I take, say, 10p off from eBay, taking their little cut from it, 10%. You maybe not even that on a £2 card. Maybe say 10 pence is just an easy all-round figure, so I'm making around about 90p. So realistically for them cards, I'm looking to try and buy at the minimum at a 50p, and this is the low ball offer. Like, this is low on every scale. So I'm looking at V cards, EXs at the minimum of about 50p per one. If I can get it under, if I can get them thrown in, perfect. They're going to be the extra little ones to throw on to be able to get on there, because also you have got listing fees and holding fees, so it's normally 12p per card once you go over the 300 slots each month. And then if you've got them every month, you've got to keep making that profit. Now, they're to bulk out your store more so than anything. So what you do from there is you then have basically all of these V's, EXs, which people could throw in on the extra. So for instance, if I've got loads of illustration rares and they think, okay, well, he's got a lot of temporal forces, but I've still got a couple of EXs to throw in, they're just things that throw on top. Because then if I've got a bulk order of 10-15 cards, 5 of them being EXs, 3 of them being illustration arts, and the rest being SARs, the postage is in one. So all of them cards, basically, the whole point is you're trying to attract people to buy more than just one singular card, because that's where the money's to be made. When it comes to singular cards, you've got to think of, if I sell something at just once, then obviously you've got to make sure that you're obviously getting your profit. But if you want to try and encourage people to spend X amount, so say if you do £40, if you spend more than that, you get a £5 discount or something. But you don't want to make it that it's just going crazy, that everybody's kind of limited to doing that consistently. You just want to make it as appealing as possible to buy as much as possible, meaning you're only sending one package out at a time. It's just another way in think of running a business, something like that. But basically from there, if you are looking to do that online, it's a very decent way in terms of it, because it's a very easy, manageable way to start with. Once you start getting a lot of orders, and you got to think you've got to reinvest a lot of it to start with. It's why I would suggest, whenever looking at anything like this, you are trying to kind of start as almost a side hustle, something that you don't readily want the money back from it. You want to put everything back into it, because realistically you're going to need a good amount of capital to be able to buy people's collections, be able to go to conventions, and obviously buy product in itself to be able to keep the whole thing rolling. Because if I have 500 cards and in the first 3 months I sell 300 of them, if I've only got 200 left and they've already not sold in that 3 months, the likely chance is prices need to either be dropped or they're just not in the rotation at yet. I need to then reinvest to put another 300 cards back in, another 400 cards back in. And once you then get the quantity, if I've got 8,000 cards selling every single time, I can just consistently keep ringing it round. And the whole point is to get to a level where you are hitting X amount of sales every day. You know specifically what you're kind of going for, and if you've been doing it a while, you know what's selling consistently. Illustration rares at a good price will sell pretty much most days. Realistically, the ones that are going to be a little bit harder, the more expensive ones in the niche market, and most definitely condition is going to be the big one. It's why if you get something that is damaged, if it is considerably played, heavy played, you've got to really hold out for the right person for that. It's not going to be an everyday thing. Near mint's going to be the easiest one to sell. Vintage in a light play, in a reasonable condition, is going to be quite easy to sell as well. But it is the whole point of trying to get the product as well. If you are looking at Facebook, if you are looking on eBay, you're looking on Etsy, you've always got to be wary as well of any sort of fake kind of buyers. And this is where the harder part of going full time, where it is consistently your income, is the hardest bit, because you get scammed of 10,000, 1,000, 100, even not being able to make the sales of 500 after doing so much work is going to put a lot of stress on. And it's why people do normally opt for product, because it's easy once you've kind of got to that point of, you know, that you're either in your distribution's good books, you've got distribution, and you're getting a consistent amount. You know that that is a guaranteed that you can't really get scammed from a distribution. You may get kind of stiffed with products that don't really sell, but if you're at a certain level where you know that you're going kind of full time and you've got the singles and the product, it does work out pretty well that way. So in a long kind of answer, yes, it is possible to go full time. It is very difficult in itself, and I do think utilizing all of your platforms to gain. If I was personally look at trying to do this as a complete job, this was the only thing I do, you'd be looking at doing the YouTube if you can. We've seen Pokiani is a great example of that. You then look at TikTok if you can, if you've got opinions about stuff, if you've got product. We've seen, I can't remember, I know his TikTok, but you've got it's the Zard something. He basically does his packaging and it's very high end. It's interesting to see a product that he's got, but also it's kind of the interactive side of stuff. If you want to order from him, he could potentially put your order on there, frozen in a little goodie bag. Works really nicely on TikTok as well. You then obviously got your Instagram if you are looking to sell on there. If you kind of add a little bit extras for maybe slabs that you'd prefer, and you'd obviously want to go for less percentage of somebody else selling it. So if you've got a really high-end card of like an Umbreon at a 10 and you want to sell it for, say, just put a ballpoint of $2,000, if you used to do that on eBay, obviously they take a percentage. They do give you the guarantee as well, so PayPal will take something as well, but you can obviously put it into a market where you know that there's going to be no kind of low balls, you know who you're going with, and just selling it at conventions is going to be another way. You obviously do have to buy a premium or buy a table at the minimum, so you've got to make sure that you are covering that, plus then costs of obviously travel, of staying over if it is a distance of where you're going, if you can't travel back, but then also to be able to restock back in as well. So there is a lot of things to kind of go with rather than just jumping 2 feet into it. I would definitely be looking at it kind of more as a side hustle to just really help the addiction of actually buying more cards, to be honest. And it's just an interesting way to see what ways people go. Jar Chomp and obviously Coop is going to be another great one for vending content. That's going to be one, as well as like someone like Randy, who's obviously made himself a great company, as well as then selling product and singles and all of that good stuff, plus vending. Whatnot is going to be another one that you can go with. I'm not necessarily massively familiar with actually selling on Whatnot, but when it comes to seeing people's Whatnot streams, I've kind of seen a few. I've had a look at some, not really bought too much from them. I know there is, again, there are avenues of either a little bit riskier stuff that you can find, and to be honest, sometimes things just going a little bit cheaper. So I would suggest that's going to be stock that hasn't really kind of sold, but you could sell it at maybe a little bit of a cheaper rate and get it gone instantly on Whatnot as well through streams. So if you merge all of that together, it does give you a little bit of a recipe for success. Whether you want to make it happen or not is going to be down to you and how much work you're going to put into it. But I would suggest most definitely looking through the options, and definitely the options that I've suggested, and different people that have kind of made it as well. That's going to be the biggest one, is seeing what their kind of way of doing it has happened, and which route they've kind of gone through. And you can kind of see which path you would like to choose, because it's not necessarily, like I say, all equal. It's not a set way of this is how you become a Pokemon seller, a Pokemon full-time enthusiast. This is just an avenue that you could go down. Like I say, product could be one, singles could be the other, vending, even just creating content on it and maybe sharing your idea of kind of newer vintage stuff. You could then, for instance, there's some people going on kind of like the cleaning and grading. You could even make a full-time job out of just grading cards. Again, it's risky. All of it is risky because the prices can just bottom out pretty much instantly, and if you've got stock, the whole point is to be able to kind of almost leverage your stock to a point where you just cannot, no matter if it drops, if it goes back up, because it's a constant up and down, that you cannot basically be stung with that. So let me know down below if you've got any stories of any sort of content creation or any sort of selling in the hobby. Apart from that, make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.